Hello everybody. So today we'll be going through and editing some of my photos from the Adirondacks recently. I went through and selected the best ones for what we will be doing. And most of these, exception of these last ones, are all from Lake Champlain. So the first thing that I do, since I blend a lot of my exposures for highlights and shadows, will be to select two images and open as layers in Photoshop. So now that we're in Photoshop, I always put the darker layer on top. We will select both layers, go to edit, and then auto align layers. Hit OK. There's a very slight shift, as you can tell by this gap here, between the images, but using a tripod it's usually very minimal. So then we're only going to select the top layer, create a new layer mask, shortcut G for a gradient, and we'll just drag down right in the middle. So right now is the opposite effect of what we're looking to do. So we're going to invert the mask by Control I. It's not too bad. You can do some very fine tuning. So I unlocked the mask from the layer, because if we had kept them locked, we could go to free transform. It'll adjust the whole layer. We don't want that. We just want to affect the mask. So unlock it, go to free transform. Now we'll just, you can just drag it out to make it more gradual, look more natural. I think it looks pretty good. Dust spot right there. Deal with that later. So we're going to close this, hit yes to save the changes, and head back into Lightroom. So this is our blended image now. Go to develop, straighten out, probably straighten a tad bit more. Now we're just going to run down the whole panel. Start for basic. I usually leave the color temperature alone until the end, but let's start for contrast. Pull the shadows out so you can see more into the mountains. Maybe some dehaze or lessen. There's a lot of nice glow going around for all these treetops. Before, after, very minimal, very quick, very easy. We're gonna go back into Photoshop now to do some fine tuning. I always want to do edit, copy Lightroom adjustments. Alright, so now we're back in Photoshop. We're gonna do Control J, create a duplicate of the layer. And first thing we should probably do is look for the dust spots, which can be a little tedious, but it's definitely worth it. Here's one. So there's different ways you can take care of them. I use the patch tool. So I just select it. I think it's a quick way to do it. And then Shift F5 brings up content aware fill and hit enter. And then just keep moving on. Alright, then we're into coloring. I always go to color lookup first, and three strip look really gives a nice pop. Looks, a little more vibrant, a little more contrasty. You can always adjust the opacity of the layer to really mess with how much it's being applied. I think that looks pretty good. Next I go to is channel mixer, and this is our output channels for red, green, blue. Each one of these will affect those channels. So another thing is just further fine tuning your images. And there's no set numbers, so it's just going off of what looks best to you. Really just eyeing it. The importance here would be the color accuracy of your monitor to really make sure you're not doing any too funky colors. See before and after on that. Next is go back to color balance for shadows, midtones, highlights. Again, these are all minimal, and it's just by going by eye. So from here, looks pretty good. You know, take these off, go one by one again, and see how the changes are made. One thing I might do is the mountains are really blue, and it's not too natural. So I'm gonna adjust just the blue in those mountains. So go to hue, saturation, adjustment layer, and click on the selector tool. So we can make sure we're selecting right here. If you actually press and drag, you can see the areas that it's affecting. So we'll reset that down to 0. Make sure we're on blues. And we'll just desaturate a little bit. I think that looks pretty good. Now, it also affected the sky in the foreground. So the way that I address that is I'm going to invert the mask and then hit B for brush. Now I'm going to just brush the area that I want. One thing to make sure to remember is to lower your flow and your hardness, just to make sure it's a more gradual and not too aggressive looking. And then you just brush over your area so you want effect. Turn this one on and off. I'm going to group these together because that will come in handy later. So you can select them all and either press the folder on the bottom or do Control G and I'll group them. I'm going to do Control C to copy the group for the next few images that we do. So once that's done, close out, go back in Lightroom. So now we're back in Lightroom. This is where I'll go through and do a third run of color changes and other fine adjustments. Usually the final run, unless I notice anything else as I go. I think I might do, select the sky. Maybe I'll lower the exposure on the sky. Thankfully to Lightroom's new sky select feature, it makes it a lot easier. So we will, where is it? There we go. Unclick show overlay so we can see the adjustments as they happen. I like to increase highlights just so there's still like a glow going around the top of the mountains. Outside of that, I'm pretty happy with how that looks. So we will set the color label to green for good to go and move on. Now the next images we do following this, since we pretty much have a base edit, we'll continue the same look through the rest of them, so it'll be a lot faster. I don't use presets, but I do try and edit each group of images I do to look pretty similar. So this is just a vertical orientation or portrait orientation of this image here, focusing that's on the dock that's down there. So same thing as before, select two of them, edit in, open its layers in Photoshop. Put the dark layer on top, select both, edit, auto align, hit OK. Select our top layer, apply our layer mask, press G so we get to gradient. Sometimes it will default to the paint bucket, but just press Shift G to cycle through until you get to gradient. It's also important to remember to make sure you are on the black to white gradient, otherwise you're not going to get the result that we need. So start in the middle, just drag down, again invert. And this one's a little more drastic, so we will unlink the layers again, right click, free transform. Just drag this out. You can always zoom out and pull above the canvas to make it even more gradual. And on and off. It's pretty good. And back to Lightroom. So since we pretty much edited the same image before, we're just going to go over here, select that image, hold Control, click on the current one that we're editing, right click, develop settings, and sync settings, and then hit synchronize. So it's just going to copy everything we did before, and we'll just straighten that out. I think I might do for this one, just pull the shadows a little bit more. Alright, now we're going to go back into Photoshop. Control J again to copy the layer. Now I copied the settings from the last image in Photoshop, so just to repaste the whole group, we should Control V, and there's our edit. One thing that I'll probably have to change maybe is this hue saturation mask. So we'll delete this layer mask, apply a new one, invert the new one, go back to our brush, and do the same thing again. One thing I didn't do in this one yet was look for dust spots. So we'll just zoom in here, get a couple right off the bat. Pretty good. So now we'll close this out and go back to Lightroom. Once again, we'll select this one, right click, develop settings, sync settings, and synchronize. The one thing that didn't copy, I believe, would be the sky. So select the sky, turn this off. Add in just a slight amount noise reduction there. Alright, now for my portrait orientations, you always want to make it so when you go to upload to Instagram, you can have the whole image shown inside a frame. So we're going to edit in Photoshop again. Now that we're here, you're going to want to hit C for the crop tool. I already have this default to 4x5, which is the crop for Instagram. Now we're going to hold Shift, grab the corner, bring it up, same in the bottom left, bring it down, and enter. And that's that. You just close out and save. And we'll select both these layers, set the color label to green, and move on. Let's see what I got here. I always like getting photos of the ice fissures for context to the area. So we're going to select the two layers and sync the settings again. Now it's a little orange, got more dust. So let's I like getting these images because the local New York State DEC likes to share this kind of stuff to encourage people to go out. Now the next two are also ice fishing photos, so I will sync across these three to match the settings I just did. This one's a little darker. Let's bring it up a lot. Alright, let's go into Photoshop. Dust first because there's a lot of it. Now, this is what I was saying before, I only do these if it's noticeable, and that's pretty noticeable. Alright, we'll paste our settings now. We're going to turn off the hue saturation because it really doesn't make a difference here. I think this looks fine with the blue in the back. And we'll run through these real quick. Warm that up a little bit. Gonna copy this group just because the next image will be fairly similar. One thing I liked about Schiggles and I noticed as it was flying around was this, I believe that's a seagull. It's pretty cool to see that flying around. Save. Let's copy this over. We'll do linear gradient up from the bottom here. Turn off the overlay. Let's just lower the saturation a little bit. Make it look more white and snow. Then we'll do a new linear gradient to the top. Pretty good. And before and after. Go back to Photoshop and do our little frame again. To the next one. Let's paste our settings. Back to Lightroom. Do some color noise reduction in there. Lower the reds just a tad. I like this when I shot it, when I selected it, but now I'm not feeling it. Same with this one. It's not a bad image, but that's one thing I noticed, that as I continue editing through photos from when I started to when I end, a lot of photos don't end up making the cut. Sometimes I'll just see what it looks like with the settings. This one though, I pulled over on the side of the road for these next two. It's well worth it. Definitely going to do a sky gradient. Just do it linear. Just make it easier. Alright, into Photoshop. Now, since it's only a single image, you can't select Open as Layer to Photoshop, so we're just going to do Edit in Photoshop. Control J, let's get rid of this dust. Alright, Control V. Wow. Now that's a drastic change. One thing I don't like is the amount of saturation in the foreground here, so delete this layer. We're going to do hue saturation again. This time we are going to select It's orange and yellow. Same thing, Control I. Brush, increase the hardness a little bit. Then we will duplicate this. But this time, leave the yellows alone. We're only going to affect the blues. Back to our brush. Helps if I lower the blues. See the difference? Probably even go a little further. Out of curiosity, let's see what happens if we just slightly shift our whole saturation. Put it below these. And back to Lightroom. Color label green. And sync over this. Let's see what this looks like. Before and after. A little too much noise reduction, so we're losing details, so we're going to back that off. And I might actually do some noise reduction in the sky. Nice. Alright, now we'll do the same thing to this image, but I'm actually going to reopen this in Photoshop, hit Edit Original this time around, and select and copy this group and close out. That way, when I go in here, edit in Photoshop, Control V, we'll actually move this layer mask. Delete that layer mask. So if you hold Alt, click and drag the layer mask down, it'll copy it. Alright, and last thing we'll do is make a duplicate copy and take care of any dust. Close out. Sure if that's dust or not, but we'll take it out. I don't think it is. On this side. Alright. And then back in Photoshop this summer. Make sure Lightroom adjustments. So I think we're actually going to edit here, and I'm going to show you what I do to export. So I will unselect all the yellow, so now we'll have only the green ones that are ready to go. Control A, right click, export, and then export. I always do same folder as original photo. Put in subfolder, I do F for final, just keep it short. Resize the fit at 2000 at 300 pixels per inch, quality 100. These are my settings for anything social media, and it always looks good to me. Never have any issues. I mean, should export. Appreciate your time making it through this video. I know it was kind of long, but hopefully I did something to where you could learn from. If anyone has any suggestions on what I should do, happy to hear it. I've been doing photography for a long time, but I'm still always willing to learn. Until next time, thank you.